What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? How are we doing? Hopefully everyone is having a good day, a good morning, a good night whenever you're watching this. And I'm recording this in the afternoon on Monday. Had about a little less than 24 hours to soak in everything we saw yesterday. Chiefs against the Eagles. Andy Reid, Howie Roseman taking on each other, trying to win the Super Bowl. Chiefs trying to win their third straight. Howie trying to win his second in 7-8 years with two coaches. Be pretty legendary. Can't be many general managers who have won multiple Super Bowls with multiple coaches. So we got a lot going on. A lot going on in the NFL. We had countless press conferences today. Jerry Jones, Schottenheimer. We had Aaron Glenn. We had Spytek and Pete Carroll. We had Liam Cohen down in Jacksonville. So I'll hit on some of that stuff. Robert Saleh. I don't think we've talked about that as well. Robert Saleh was hired as the defensive coordinator. Kyle Shanahan's getting the band back together. So we just got a lot going on. We will have a mailbag out a little bit later today. We have a lot of questions in those DMs. So at John Middlekauff, you can fire in those DMs. But before we dive into some football, you know I got to tell you about my friends. You know I got to tell you about my partners. Game Time. They are the best ticketing app in America. They're easily the best ticketing app I've ever used. I have gone to more events over these last couple of years because of them. Listen, buying tickets sometimes can be stressful. This app makes it really, really easy. You can search by event, you can search by venue, you can search by the team, college or pro, go to a concert, go to a comedy show, have some laughs, smile, enjoy yourself. Sometimes you just got to get out of the house. Sometimes it's just time to get out of the house on a Friday night, on a Saturday night, and go have some fun. You know, we're all in the rat race, trying to keep up with the Joneses, grinding along. And sometimes life, you're like, is it passing me by? Do I need to go to a concert? Do I need to go to a game and watch my squad and just have a night out? And yes, you do. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price is guaranteed. Legacy. I think we hear that word, we use that word a lot. What is someone's legacy? And obviously with public figures, whether you're a musician, an actor, obviously an athlete or a coach, there are ways we quantify that. How many hit songs you've had, how many big movies you've had as an athlete, how many championships you've won, how many games you've won, how much money you've made as a coach, same type thing. And, you know, I think in football, you have these kind of like transcendent individuals. Like, I never watched Vince Lombardi coach a game, but Vince Lombardi, to me, a football coach is kind of the Babe Ruth. He is a name that his legacy and his impact was so strong that people discuss him. I'm 40 years old. I was born in the 80s. Vince Lombardi did not coach a game in the 80s, obviously, since then. Yet he was discussed like he was the greatest coach to ever walk the face of this earth. And I still speak like that. And we still quote Vince Lombardi. Bill Walsh is a good example. I don't remember watching him ever coach a game in the pros. I kind of mildly remember him at Stanford. But Bill Walsh's entire setup of his organization are things that Mike Shanahan kept, are things that Pete Carroll kept. Basically, his philosophical views on how to build a team is what Bill Belichick copied. And Andy Reid indirectly is from that family because Mike Holmgren got him his start in the pros, working for the Green Bay Packers, who had worked under Bill Walsh from the 49ers and Coach Joe Montana and Steve Young. So the cool part about football is all these things are interconnected. I'm watching John Spytek today get introduced with the Raiders. He had the same job, maybe a little different, who knows, in 2005, as I had in 2010 with the Philadelphia Eagles. He got his start in scouting working for Andy Reid. Howie Roseman became a general manager under Andy Reid. And a lot of personnel guys for Belichick, and we go, could Andy Reid ever eclipse Bill Belichick? And I would have told you a couple years ago, it's just going to be impossible. It's a numbers game. How's he ever going to get to 6 championships? And now you look and you go, well, he has a chance in less than 2 weeks to get his fourth and third in a row, something no coach in NFL history has ever done. And while Belichick, like Andy Reid, has a pretty powerful personnel group, a lot of guys have worked under Belichick, have worked under Andy Reid, and gone on to have success. I would say I think Andy's have had a little more success, but Bill has a lot of guys doing a lot of good things. Adam Peters got his start in New England, just led the freaking Washington Commanders to the NFC Championship game. Nick Caserio has turned around the Texans back-to-back years they've won a playoff game. But as a coach, like one thing Bill Walsh had is think about all the guys that worked for him that went on to great success. And that is the one knock on Belichick. It's like, why couldn't anyone leave the Belichick umbrella and go on and do it for themselves? It's like, did he not share anything with anyone else? Clearly, Belichick left the New England Patriots and the whole thing just fell apart. That's why they immediately fired Mayo and went right to Vrabel. And you look at Andy Reid, I was thinking this yesterday, it's like, well, he just beat Sean McDermott, who got his start with Andy Reid. Last year, he beat John Harbaugh, both in the conference championship game, who got his start in the pros with Andy Reid. It's like, so you're telling me the two other best teams in the AFC are Andy Reid guys? It's like kind of a big deal. I mean, it's like that Belichick doesn't have anything close to that of coaches that had worked for him. It's like that's the thing with Walsh. It's like, Walsh had Seifert, he had Holmgren. Seifert went on to win. Holmgren went on to win. Seifert hired Shanahan. It's all the web went like this. Where Belichick's, it's like when they're under Belichick, they're kicking ass and taking names. When they leave the nest, it implodes. Well, it's like, if you think about it, Belichick gets he went to 9 Super Bowls. Is there, this is Andy Reid's 6th. And now Andy Reid is in a category all by himself. No other coach besides Belichick has ever been to that many Super Bowls. So I think at this point in time, you could put him in the argument. If you had the Mount Rushmore of football coaches, you could easily say it's Lombardi, Walsh, Andy Reid, and Belichick. And anytime you're nitpicking who's the best, some people would say Lombardi's the best. I know where I come from, it'd be hard. You'd be hard pressed to get anyone to come off Bill Walsh. Belichick might tell you is Bill Walsh. I think Belichick's pretty special. What Andy Reid is on right now is the ultimate heater. And if he wins 3 straight, that's got to be worth something because it's literally Belichick and Brady never did it. And the thing is like, well, Belichick won some Super Bowls when he worked for Parcells as a defensive coordinator. Well, Andy did the same thing. He was like one of Holmgren's right-hand men with the Green Bay Packers and Brett Favre. Won a Super Bowl, went to another. So he's had success as assistant coach, dominated as a head coach. And one main point of differentiation is like when they've got their all-time great quarterback, they kicked everyone's ass. Andy won with a ton of other quarterbacks. I saw Mike Vick, wasn't the easiest guy to play with, even though he was an exceptional talent, right? Little inaccurate, kind of small, and got injured a lot. I wasn't there for Donovan McNabb, but good player, solid player, had some flaws. Also, little inaccurate. And as we saw in the Super Bowl back in the day when Terrell Owens snapped on him, was out of shape. So it's like Alex Smith, just physically pretty limited. And he won a ton of games with all those guys. Then you give him Patrick Mahomes, he's just rattling off Super Bowls. He wins this thing he's not 80 years old. I'm not saying he's going to get to 6, but I think it would definitely be in the realm of possibility, because this team is going to be better next year. And I never would have thought that a couple years ago. It's like, how are they going to do this? How are they ever going to catch him? And it's like, well, now he's starting to climb the ladder and you can see him seeing Belichick's ass. It's like, he's not that far away. He's got to win this game to have a pretty good chance. And if he wins this game, I think it's definitely on the table. I think it would be possible. And that is insane. I don't think anyone would have said that 3 years ago. But that's what happens when you potentially win 3 straight championships. And I think his legacy is more than just winning these championships. Where when you think of Bill, it's like greatest defensive mind ever, champion. When you think of Andy, one of the greatest offensive minds ever, champion, an incredible human to work for. I know personally, changed my life. I think there is probably slim to zero chance I'm working with Colin if I had worked for Doug Marrone or some other random coach in the NFL in the 2010s, right? Instead, I worked for Andy Reid and Howie Roseman. Howie Roseman's a good example. When Chip got fired and Howie Roseman got put back into this chair of GM, the Eagles since then have been to seven, they've had seven playoff appearances. They've been to the conference championship three times, and obviously they've won all three. I think I wrote down yesterday their previous scoring outputs before yesterday were when they knocked out Purdy, they won that game 31-7. When they played Minnesota with Foles, they won that game 38-7. And obviously they set a NFC record yesterday with 55 points. And Howie Roseman, where did he learn a lot of his how to build a team from? Andy Reid. So it's like I just think his impact on the game is much closer to Walsh. And part of it is when you live in the moment, it's hard to take inventory and really factor it in, but like just start factoring it in right now. It's fucking insane how many guys are Andy Reid guys who are dominating the NFL. Coaches and players. Or excuse me, coaches and executives. The only thing Bill ever had were executives because you put Matt Patricia, you put Josh McDaniels, you put Joe Judge, you put any of these guys in charge of your organization, light that thing on fire because it's got no chance it's going to be ugly. You give even his high floor guys, like, listen, Ron Rivera's never going to go down as Bill Parcells, but he took the Panthers to a Super Bowl. I know, I attended the thing. Now, I bet against them, but still. Cam Newton MVP, Ron Rivera Super Bowl. Like, that happened. We all witnessed it. So I think when you look at Andy Reid, even if he doesn't get to 6, you could argue if he goes to 5, his overall impact on the sport and his influence with different teams is going to be stronger than Belichick. And I'm not anti-Belichick. I'm not one of those guys who thinks he's overrated, who thinks it was all Brady. He's elite, just like Andy. But their personalities, Bill's is like, I'm kind of angry at the world. Unless you're Michael Lombardi, or I guess Josh a little bit, I'm just fucking pissed off. Not here to bullshit. We're like, Andy clearly teaches his guys a lot more. I mean, and the other thing is this. He does the most valuable thing in the history of the sport. He can coach the quarterback. And that mattered in the 70s, that mattered in the 90s, and that obviously matters right now. Not that Bill can't. Like, I think Bill can coach any position, but he ain't that. He can't do that. And I think having that skill is a separating factor. So I think when you look at what's on the line and listen to legacy talk and where you stand all time, you can say it's cheesy or whatever, but when you get these all-time greats in these positions, like this is kind of on the table. And he wins this, he would be in a category all by himself. Like the Mahomes talk a couple years ago sounded crazy. Well, think about this. He's playing in his 5th Super Bowl. He joins 2 other guys that can say that as well. Obviously, Tom Brady and John Elway. Joe Montana, who won 4 Super Bowls, can't even say that. Troy Aikman, who won 3 Super Bowls, can't say that. Guys like Favre, Rodgers, Steve Young, they only played, well, I guess they only won 1. And Steve only played in 1. Rodgers only played in 1. And Favre played in 2. So like Mahomes has entered this category, and I get asked about it a lot as we talk about it a lot. Like, can he catch Tom Brady? Well, it's obviously going to be very difficult, but he is climbing up like Andy Reid. They are chasing those 2 guys, and they are hot on their tail. And a lot like those 2 guys in the biggest games, I don't remember play for play in every game Belichick and Brady were ever in, but I remember always leaving those games going, what a freaking win. That was remarkable how they pulled that game out of their ass. Say the same thing about the Chiefs. I heard a stat today driving around. Like, Mahomes has been losing in 9 playoff games in the second half. He's won 6 of them, and 2 other ones he took to overtime. So his ability to be down, and part of like what Brady really hung his hat on, obviously he could see, he was tall, and by, when he really came into his own, his arm got stronger, I thought, in his career, but like past '07, like he had a big time arm. But like was his mental toughness, how unfazed the guy was. And there is that element with Patrick Mahomes, like obviously athletically he's superior to Brady, a little shorter, uh, I would say a little more vibrant arm. Definitely can manipulate the ball a little bit, and because he can move. But I think the intangible stuff is when you watch Patrick Mahomes. Like yesterday hit you. It's like I didn't end up betting on the game because I was out of money by the time the game came around, because I blew it on some other stupid stuff. But I remember thinking, in what world, how would I pick against this team? And I even had some buddies on the Chiefs. Like, what are you thinking? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I just tried to be different. And I'm not rooting against you guys. Like I love watching you. I'm not one of these haters. It's like it's just the referees. It's just the league. No, that was the Lakers. Like that's an objective fact that happened. Mob was in on it. So was David Stern. That's not happening here. But like the Patriots, they're creating these wins. They knew Josh Allen does the tush push standing up to the left over the left guard. They were stuffing his ass constantly. That wasn't random. Like that didn't just randomly happen. Pretty good penetration there. No, Jim Nantz literally said it. They know it's coming and they know where he's going to be. And I told this to Colin, like, that's not a tush push. That's just a quarterback sneak. One team runs the tush push. Even Mark Andrews. No, Mark Andrews, when they brought him in for the Ravens, he runs what Josh does. He just stands up and he goes forward, and he's big and powerful, and he usually gets it. Jalen Hurts disappears. You don't see him till they just mark first down, and then he gets up or a touchdown. But I was also thinking about this, like texting with some buddies on the Chiefs. They think Josh Allen is a superstar, and they have nothing but admiration for his just competing against him. But like, think of the disadvantage, and I would throw Lamar, whose coordinator just got a contract extension, and Joe Burrow, whose coach is also the play caller in Zach Taylor. You're playing Andy Reid, who is the play caller for Patrick Mahomes. So you have, Walsh on the short list. Walsh, Mike Shanahan, Mike Holmgren. Some of the great play callers in the history of the sport, they got it. And they got one of the best quarterbacks of all time. And you got great quarterback, right? Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. It's like you got Todd Monken, who's not as good as Steve Spagnuolo. You got Joe Brady, who's up and coming good play caller, who's not even 40 years old. You think he's going to fucking beat Joe or Steve Spagnuolo? You got Zach Taylor, who, let's face it, I think Joe Burrow's superstar. Who doesn't? But like, if Mahomes doesn't get a concussion in that AFC Championship game, do the Bengals win? Come on. Never seen Mahomes play like that in a playoff game, ever. So it's not a fair fight. And who your partner is as a star quarterback, Montana got Walsh. Brady got Belichick. Peyton Manning is probably the outlier that I or you could have coached him. It didn't matter. I remember hearing stories when I worked in the NFL, when they would walk out to practice, he would say, give me the practice script and give me a red pen. This is when he's in his cleats and his shoulders and his helmet. And he would make corrections before practice started of what he wanted. That's not normal. Why? Because Peyton Manning was their offensive coordinator. Aaron Rodgers attempted to do that this year. How'd that go? So I just think that this matchup, the legacies, what's on the line, Andy's and Mahomes as well are much closer to Belichick and Brady than anyone would have thought a year ago. That's what happens when you win your second straight Super Bowl and have a chance to win your third. This ain't the little itty-bitty tiny bowl. This is the Super Bowl 59. Get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 59. Scoring touchdowns is key to hosting the Vince Lombardi Trophy. and you have a shot to score big by betting on them at DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score a TD. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. New DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. The crown is yours. Let's fire around some NFL stories. Jerry was on one today, man. He was in rare form. Now, one thing's clear. Jerry can sell ice to an Eskimo. He is an elite salesman. I went looking at some cars like a month ago, and sales guy was giving me the business. And then for the next couple weeks, he's just wearing me out. And I appreciate, and some of you guys listen that have tried to sell me on different things. I appreciate a good hustle. Doesn't mean I'm going to accept. Doesn't mean that I want your business, but I do appreciate the hustle. And anyone in sales, like it's a tough job, and you get numb to being told no a lot. People ghosting you, like it's challenging. Jerry approaches these press conferences and the way he talks to people like he's trying to sell you a car, like he's trying to sell you something. And it's like, I even kind of bought some of his bullshit today, talking about Brian Schottenheimer. And I think two things can be true because I judge you on your actions, not your words. They mean little to nothing to me. They put this press release out on Friday night. So Jerry can claim he was excited about it. But if he was as excited as he thought other people would be excited, he would have put it out Monday morning. But he knew that everyone was going to shit on this hire, and no one has any clue if Brian Schottenheimer's going to be any good. No one does. I don't. Like, you're telling me that Brian Schottenheimer can't win 11 games next year? I don't know. Like, I think everyone acts like he's going to be the village idiot. Like, he's coached in the NFL for a long time. His dad was a very successful coach. He's been a successful coordinator at certain spots. He had some success in Seattle. He obviously had success when he was with Rex Ryan and Mark Sanchez and had the number one rushing team in the league with the New York Jets. Like this guy, people act like it's insanity. Now it's insanity because part of becoming a hot candidate is either being like Ben Johnson, where you have the best offense, or being a coach where you have the best defense in the league. And it's just like, regardless of what I sound like or what my agent pumps to the media, my work speaks for itself. Or I have the agent that pumps everything to the media and just gains and garners attention and buzz and just people talking about me. And Brian Schottenheimer, no one's been talking about him for years. So anytime that you're like that, it's a little out of sight, out of mind. Also, it's like, why did you fire McCarthy for this guy? Like, I think all the questions are valid. But we cannot argue that Jerry Jones is the ultimate showman and runs his team like a reality television show. And rightfully so. That's all football is now. Ultimately, winning and losing the games means a lot to fans and means a lot to the players and coaches, as it should. But the reason all this money funnels in is because we watch the games win or lose. And come Sunday, come Monday, come Thursday, millions upon millions of people are watching the reality television show that is the NFL. And if you're watching the games, a large percentage of those people follow the coaching movement, the player movement, the drama in the NFL. Not to the level of like, just all about the drama, but that plays a part in this. And the more people engage, the more people watch, and the more money the league makes. And Jerry has been on the forefront of that movement. So Jerry putting this press release out Friday takes away from everything he stands for. Now, I also think Jerry pushes back that I don't want to be uncomfortable. And he said that today. Or, like you guys act like I'm unafraid or I'm afraid to be uncomfortable. And he called BS on that. Well, Jerry, I think this was the easiest thing for you to do. And I don't blame you. If I was 82, I probably wouldn't throw a huge Hail Mary of some human being I didn't know. And I also think that Jerry's job is not as valuable as people would assume it would be from years past of being you're the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And Jerry had some incredible lines like, when he was on the team at Arkansas that won the national championship way back in the day, that he aspired to be a football coach, but football coaches didn't make any money and he wanted to live in a big house and drive a nice car, so he got into business. And if he knew how much football coaches were going to be making, he just would have gotten to football coaches because he pays them all now. Like he was just he makes you smile, he makes you laugh. But I do think the Cowboys are kind of the worst version. And let's face it, Jerry's 82. Most shows, some of the greatest shows of all time, usually don't end great. Usually, when you get hooked, is early on. And isn't that kind of the Cowboys, right? Especially if you're my age or a little bit older, if you're somewhere between 35 to 55, like your best memories of the Cowboys are the mid 90s. I guess if you're 35, probably not, but my age or older. Most recently would be the Jimmy Johnson Cowboys. And that hooked you because how could it not? Turned into a little dynasty, some of the greatest players in the history of the game. Jimmy Johnson, Jerry Jones, just kicking everyone's ass. If it wouldn't have been for the 49ers, you probably win four straight Super Bowls. Maybe Brett Favre too. But this thing's ending pretty ugly, man. It really is. And listen, I have not anti Brian Schottenheimer at all. But I think when you look at the Eagles and how dynamic that franchise is of doing everything necessary to build the team, make moves, being on the forefront of trends, how are you going to compete with that? How are you going to compete if Jaden Daniels just maintains his level of play? Even if he doesn't dramatically improve, but that is just the Jaden Daniels we see moving forward. You're not going to. You can't. And I think one thing with Jerry is he's always like a year short. Like he had the opportunity to hire Sean Payton. He didn't. Hell, he had the opportunity last year, could have just fired Mike McCarthy and named Dan Quinn as head coach. But he didn't. He let him go to Washington. That was on the table. He could have done that, but he chose not to. And that's what I think he's desperately trying to force. Like, I want my guy on my staff. Sometimes that has to happen organically. And it feels like Jerry can just never get it right over the last 10, 15, 20 years. And every time he's tried, it's kind of blown up in his face. And he gets defensive, and I would too if I was in his shoes. But this is going to be tough. This is going to be really, really tough sledding. It's funny. I saw Aaron Glenn's quote today saying that he will not be the defensive coordinator, that he will hire somebody, and he will be the CEO of the team. And I was thinking about this. It's funny. Whenever these defensive guys get hired, they almost immediately become the CEO and no longer call defense, even though the reason they got hired was because of his defensive expertise. And I'm not trying to hate on Aaron Glenn. He is not alone by any means. Robert Saleh, who was in that seat and on that dais, whatever, 4 or 5 years ago, did the same thing. Got hired, then immediately gave up his play calling duties and became a CEO. Yet basically every time I see an offensive head coach hired, I saw Liam Cohen ask, "Will you call plays?" Yes, I will call plays. Ben Johnson, "Will you call plays?" Yes, I will call plays. That's the reason I was hired. I'm going to be the head coach and the offensive play caller. Yet these defensive guys never do it. I don't have a great theory for it, but I say it all the time. And Aaron Glenn's, I would say, probably a little more unique than Solid, just given his long, long playing career. But when I hire a coach, specifically a young guy, I'm glad all these offensive guys say, "Yeah, I'm going to call plays." That's the fucking reason they hired me. So I wish Aaron Glenn best of luck. He mentioned the Aaron Rodgers situation they hope to have figured out essentially sooner than later. I think if I was a betting man sitting here on January 27th, I would guess that Aaron Rodgers is not going to be on the team. And I would guess that Aaron Rodgers is going to have options to play other places. And it wouldn't shock me if a place like the Raiders, um, Aaron Rodgers, if I'm guessing today, I think it's more unlikely that Aaron Rodgers is retired, and it's more unlikely that Travis Kelce is playing. Well, I think if a lot of people assume like Travis Kelce's going to keep playing, their team's good, and Aaron Rodgers is going to retire, I think it's the opposite. I expect Travis Kelce. Again, I don't have any inside information. I bet he retires, and I bet Aaron Rodgers attempts to keep playing. Uh, you know, I like Robert Saleh. I've rooted for Robert Saleh for a long time. But I think anytime that a coach finds himself in a difficult spot and he just goes back to the well, uh, you can get in some trouble doing that. And I think Kyle Shanahan has really had a hard time once D'Amico left. And D'Amico was a pretty special hire. Obviously, Steve Wilkes just didn't vibe for whatever reason with Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. This year with Sorensen was just a disaster. It didn't go well, and it wasn't all his fault. And the 49ers got lucky that, Robert Saleh just didn't really have any other options, and they're paying him a lot of money, and they're just getting the band back together. But sometimes and it's different, like they didn't break up. It's not like he fired him, he got another job. But there's, I would say, usually a reason, like ex-girlfriends or ex-boyfriends, they get back together, and it's just a little different. Even if early on you're like, God, this sparks are flaming again. Woohoo! So I'm rooting for this to work, but I don't know. I just don't think it's as plug and play. And we see this sometimes with coaches. Belichick always does this with his guys, brings guys back. I just think there's a lot of risk involved. And, this time around, before Robert Saleh was a different man. He didn't have millions upon millions of dollars in the bank. Kyle Shanahan could tell him to jump and he'd say, how high? Well, if I'm Robert Saleh, it's like, I'm not going to get yelled at all the time by you, Kyle. I'm not going to just get in these contentious arguments over philosophical disagreements, which are natural in football. But before it's like, okay, Kyle, do what you want to do. Like, no, Kyle, I've got a pretty good idea of what I'm doing, what I want to do. And I think sometimes when you get people at different points in time in their career, um, you might look at that person the same, but they no longer look at you the same or their position the same. And it's going to be fascinating to see how that works because if I'm Robert Saleh, and obviously him and Kyle have a good relationship, but the relationship dynamics of like I'm not just this little nobody who's trying desperately to take the next step. Like I took the next step and I got paid 20, 30, 40 million dollars. So like I'm doing this because I like football, I like coaching guys, but I don't have to be doing this. So how you treat some of these other coaches, I'm not saying you treat them bad, but like I'm not really feeling that today, dog. It's going to be fascinating to watch. I just everyone's jumping for joy and it's exciting because I would much rather have him than Sorensen or Steve Wilkes. But I don't know, man. I think these situations sometimes can get a little weird. Uh, I watched Pete Carroll and Spy Tech today. Uh, Spy Tech, very, very cool moment for him getting to run a team, starting, where I started in those same seats. Now I'm podcasting. He's an NFL GM. You could just tell the excitement, and you could tell Pete, Pete changed John Schneider's life. I mean, when Pete got that job in Seattle and hired John, and now John's gone on to become one of the best general managers in the league. And I think Spytech realized like this is a pretty unique opportunity. I get my first job, and I get a guy that just knows what he's doing. But when you watch Pete and his age gets thrown out a lot, like it's very synonymous with his name. Pete Carroll, he's 73. Pete Carroll, he's old. Pete Carroll, it's like God. You watch him talk, he does not talk like a lot of 73-year-olds. His energy is, I would say, second to none in the NFL right now, relative to even some of the younger coaches. So I think I don't know if you're getting whatever Seattle got 14 years, you're not getting that. But I think if things go decent, like you get 4 or 5 strong years out of Pete, and then just figure it out from there. And I think the most important thing, like that's why Kyle Shanahan hired Robert Saleh. I just need to get someone who knows what they're doing. I can't get a first time coach. I can't get a coach I don't know. I just need to get a guy that knows what he's doing. And we'll figure out some of the dynamics from there. I totally understand why he did that. And if Robert Saleh, we have a lot of success and he goes on to become a head coach, In 2 years, we'll figure that problem out once we get there. We will cross that bridge then. Right now, we need to get going in the right direction. And no team needs that more than the Raiders, right? Two winning seasons in multiple decades. It has been ugly. They've been a laughing stock. And it's like Pete Carroll's the real deal. And the one thing with Pete, and he talked about today, and I really admired this. And they talked about, like, why are you doing this, Pete? He was asked this question multiple times. You've accomplished everything there is to accomplish in football: national championships, Super Bowls. You're going to go to the Hall of Fame one day, multimillionaire. And he's like, I never got into it for any of that. I got into it because I like doing this. Like, I like the process of trying to get to the playoffs, of to win a playoff game, to win a Super Bowl. And you just get this guy who's just very driven. And I think you're going to get the best of Pete Carroll now. A lot like Aaron Glenn, a lot like Liam Cohen. Your roster's your roster, and your quarterback's your quarterback. And unless you're able to get a massive upgrade, it's just going to be very tough sledding. And it'll be interesting to see who the quarterback is for the Raiders. I, Aaron Rodgers, is he Pete Carroll's type guy? Would he go back if Russell Wilson's available? Uh, I would never say never, at least just for a 1 year to get the thing going in the right direction. Because remember, when Pete Carroll took over Seattle in 2010, I think they set a record for most transactions in a calendar year. I mean, they were cutting, trading, signing guys at an unprecedented rate. It was insane. And then within a couple of years, all of a sudden they had LOB, they had Russell Wilson, they had Doug Baldwin. They just had a lot of good players. And they trade for Marshawn Lynch, and boom, they're just legit. But they churned that roster like never seen before. And I think the Raider, if you're a Raider fan, you should just be kind of proud. Like, we just got real people running the organization.